Hi, my name is Dale Johnson, and you are tuned into another episode of Young Black Equestrians.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a young
I am a young.
I'm a young
I am
And I am a young
Black.
a young black
young
black
A young black.
black equestrian.
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 black equestrian.
Equestrian.
black equestrian.
equestrian.
Black equestrian.
I'm a young black equestrian.
I am a young black equestrian.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Young Black Equestrians with your hosts, Abriana Johnson.
And Caitlin Gooch.
Today, we have another Johnson on the line, Dale, here with us from California. He is a polo player, and we are going to hear all about him today. So welcome to the show, Dale.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to finally be here.
Good. Well, let's just get started with you telling us about yourself. I told where you were located and, about your life. Just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So more specifically, I do live in California. I'm from Northern California. I'm a native here. I was born and raised in Oakland, California, and have family throughout the region. So San Francisco, Oakland, I've lived in both places. So they're right across the bay from one another. I just before we got into the sort of the live discussion here, I was just letting everyone know I work in fintech, and so that's basically what I do. So my day job is really that I do global operations at Visa, and then I maybe moonlight as a polo player. And I got into polo really because I was on a business trip in Buenos Aires once, and I saw a pair of awesome boots when I was buying some leather for my mom down there. And I was like, are those for polo? And the shopkeeper's like, yeah, for polo. And I'd always loved horses. My grandfather was a horseman. And so I was like, oh man, I want to do that because I'm pretty athletic. So I want to do something athletic on horses. And I mean, 3 years later or so, we find ourselves here. So that's about it.
Okay, so you just started riding 3 years ago?
Yeah, for the most part. I've got a pretty laser focus. When I really want to get something done, I do it. So I basically said, hey, I want to become a polo player, and I did that. So I wrote an article a few years ago about dedicating over 100 hours to polo. So I kind of put everything to the side and said to myself, hey, I want to become a really good polo player, or at least a decent one. And so I just dedicated most of my week after work to riding and, did that. So got logged in hundreds of hours, jumping, playing polo, some dressage, everything, you name it. So I did that. But horses are not necessarily new to me. My grandfather, as I said, was a horseman. My family has a ranch just north of Houston, 90 miles or so. And that's where my grandfather was born. And it's a place called High Prairie. And he was born there, and it's a black settlement that was founded shortly after Juneteenth. So I think a lot of people kind of came into understanding what Juneteenth was maybe last year or so. I always kind of lived it because my grandparents are from Texas. But shortly after Juneteenth, my family went into the cattle sort of business, and they founded, with another family called the McAdams family, they founded a black settlement called High Prairie, which now currently sits in the town of Madisonville, Texas. And so we had cattle, and that's where my grandfather was born. I think it's like 1917 or 1918. And his job was really to raise quarter horses, and he did that before he went to college. So he obviously ended up moving to California, where I find myself, but horses and being outdoors and stuff like that was always the theme of my family. So I've always loved horses, always wanted to be around them, but it wasn't until I got older that I kind of came into my own financially and maybe mentally to make it happen. So here we are.
I love it. Did you have to dig up all of that history about your family?
No, not really. So, it's funny. My mom and dad are very forward about letting me know about my family history. And so they're very proud. My mom is actually originally from the Northeast, so my family's like all through Canada, and then parts of like New England, and then largely in New York. And then my Johnson side of the family, they're all from like Texas and stuff like that, like East Texas and whatnot, so around the Houston area. And no, my family made sure that I traveled to these places, made sure that I was often moved to those places to just kind of understand sort of history, particularly Black history within sort of North America. So we obviously had a huge component that was down in the Deep South, but then also another component that was like in the Northeast and Canada, which is two very different dynamics and really interesting sort of confluence of different experiences. So kind of where we find ourselves. Yeah.
I'm just in awe, honestly. Like, wow.
Yeah.
There's a whole history there. I know from, Caitlin doing all this research into Black cowboy history and me just doing research into my own family history. It is such a blessing to know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think my mom has this saying, it's like, you don't like know where you're going if you don't know where you come from. And so just a lot of things. So I've spent a lot of time both, and I spent a ton of time with my family in the Northeast, some time with my family in the South, and both just really cool, amazing stories, and really tie in with just sort of the history of this country, the history of Black people. And so, yeah, no, it's inspiring. So I really enjoy it. I would love to hear about the work you've done too.
So much. We're not going to talk about it on this episode because this is
Right,
about
this
you.
is about you.
All right, that's good. All right. Yeah.
We would have like 5 episodes if we just talked about.
We're just gonna have a whole segment with Dale. Is fine. So we'll just go on to our next question. What is one of the biggest challenges you've faced with horses, and what did you learn from it?
Oh man. Yeah, the biggest challenges with horses is just like in polo is just finding a good trained polo pony, right? So finding a polo pony that works for you, finding a horse that you can kind of grow with. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges, because there's a lot of people in your ear telling you, that this horse would be great for you and that horse would be great. And I mean, ultimately it's up to, the rider and the player to decide, what works, right? So I think that was like one of the biggest challenges. I've been sort of practicing on my current horse, Sunny, who I feature a lot in my social media. And then, of course, I play for a club. And so they have an amazing string of horses, too. And some of those horses were offered up to me. So, I mean, it came down to deciding whether or not I wanted to continue riding with Sunny and growing with Sunny, or would I go with one of these other horses? And so there was a lot of different inputs about where I could go as a player, what it is that I could possibly do. And so I, basically said that that I would say that was one of the hardest decisions I made. So personally, I'm definitely both a head and heart kind of guy. I kind of use my head like Sunny in terms of cost, in terms of being able to grow, in terms of those things was really great. But in terms of heart, she'd really kind of grown on me. She's an amazing mare. She's really sweet, maybe sometimes a little misunderstood. And so I know how that could be, to be a little misunderstood. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger on leasing Sunny, then eventually buying Sunny.
Oh, I didn't know Sunny was a mare.
Yeah, Sunny.
Me either. Would have never guessed that based on the name.
Really, her ears are always pinned back.
Well, I feel like a lot of polo ponies, when you catch stills of them, they're like,
right. So
Got
I guess
game face on.
yeah.
I'll share this tidbit that like most of the horses played in polo are mares. It is the preferred horse of the polo player is the mare. Rarely do you really find geldings. I mean, they're there, but there's just something about the mare, nimble, intelligence, all these different sort of components that make them, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, I think, perfect for polo.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, that kind of goes into the next question. A common misconception people may have about polo.
Yeah, so I yeah, this is the kind of the thing that I really want to sort of, that's the barrier that I work to try and break down, is to try and make polo a little more sort of grassroots, ground level, accessible, right? So everybody has this idea of what polo is. You know, the Prince of Wales, the Veuve Clicquot, all these things with people like wearing seersucker and hats. I mean, like if you ever like take a look at like the Veuve Clicquot classic, you never even see like polo. You just see like a bunch of people dressed up. So I think it's very easy for people to really kind of categorize polo into like this really kind of interesting sort of leisurely sport. Don't get me wrong, all sports are leisure sports, but polo is an extreme sport. It's the fastest sport in the world. I mean, we can get up to like 30, 35 miles per an hour. If we do a breakaway, we bump our horses. There's a lot to it. And there are a lot of dynamics. I mean, it's dirty, it's rigorous, it can sometimes be very aggressive. And so if you really kind of get into it, you'll understand that polo goes far beyond this idea of like I said again, like the Prince of Wales being handed a horse by somebody. I mean, a lot of the people that you meet and a lot of the people that I've met, you know, they're maintaining their own strings. They're doing everything that's necessary to keep these horses together. And I mean, I've got one horse, but to play polo effectively as just sort of an amateur player, I think you need about 3 horses to play. So if you talk about somebody doing that on their own, when you talk about logistics and cost and management, it ends up becoming something far less glamorous than I think is sold. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that the glamour part is really nice. There's something beautiful about the sport. There's a lot of finesse, like when we hit the ball or how we ride, there's a lot of finesse into it. So, but behind all of that finesse, there are hours of work that goes into it. I would say that 90% of my time with my horse is not on the field, but off the field. Training and making sure she's right and all of those different things, so that we can literally play 15 minutes every weekend. Because I mean, like, I'll travel an hour down to our polo field, our main polo field where I play, and when you have a polo pony, you can only play them in two chukkers, which is a round of polo, which is 7 minutes 30 seconds, and I play for 15 minutes. But the whole week before that weekend, I'm like cleaning tack, riding her, practicing, sticking and balling, which is what we call like practice. It's almost like shooting free throws. It's basically just going out with a mallet and a ball and just hitting around on a field. I'd say 90% of that work is not even on the field. And then that 15 minutes where people see us play, or if I get another horse, maybe up to an hour or so, that's it. Like, so it's there's a lot of work that goes into it that's unseen. So I definitely want to change that perception that the horse has to be strong, the athlete has to be really strong, and that connection really has to be there.
Wow. This seems more extreme than I thought in my head.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, a lot of the champagne and, like I said, the straw hats and the seersucker suits can get people kind of twisted. So it's definitely not necessarily all that it seems. So.
Right. What does conditioning look like for a polo pony?
We ride every day. There are different like things that I try to work on with her. Basically, stamina is huge. The polo field, I think, is like a regulation one is about 1,000 feet long. So I mean, we're doing runs. Sometimes you can run coast to coast. Sometimes you can, like I said, we're bumping into horses and things like that. So we're swinging mallets around the horse's head. So getting them conditioned for all of these different components, things that would normally spook a horse, can't really spook a polo pony. So running up against another horse maybe, reeling back or bucking, or, somebody swinging a mallet, or being hit in the head with a mallet or something like that, or being popped in the butt with a ball. Like all of these things, I mean, these horses have to be almost like sort of unflappable. And so training her and making sure that she's conditioned for those things is one of the components of our training sort of schedule. Another thing is just kind of like trotting, making sure she's strong, making sure she has the stamina to go about it. And the same for the player. I mean, I'm always kind of trying to make sure that like I have the stamina to play the game because 7 minutes 30 seconds. We're like cantering the entire game. We're posting at the canter. That's like the huge thing that you see in polo. That's because we're like that's to help us like maintain our energy. There's a lot to it, so you really come off the field like dirty and sweaty, and there's a lot of different things to it. So yeah. So hopefully I didn't go too long there.
No.
How did you have to train your mindset to just get used to all of that? Because you said that you just started riding and then you entered the most extreme horse sport.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think a good way to go about it is if you've played other sports outside of polo. And I've dabbled in a lot of different sports outside of polo. I think in high school I ran track and field. In college I dabbled a bit in rugby, played racquetball. And so there's a few things that, and then I went into like amateur sort of like Olympic weightlifting as well. So all those sports kind of get your mind right about to play. So and a lot of those sports, especially like Olympic weightlifting, is pretty rigorous, and it's one where one has to do it every day and they kind of have to be consistent at it. So more or less building that discipline and making sure that happens was easy. It was easily transferable over to polo, and a lot of the sort of fundamentals that I learned in like Olympic weightlifting are perfect for polo, like keeping your heels down, hyperextending your back, putting your chest out, trying to keep your hands as quiet as possible, which is something I'm still working on. Just all of these different things really kind of helped or easily transferred into sort of my sort of tenure with polo, if you will.
Wow, that is really cool. That's
yeah.
Cool. So what vision do you have for the future in your riding journey?
Oh, beautiful. That's a good question. So each year, my good friend Oliver, he's sometimes in my stories and on Instagram, he's a dude from the UK that I met playing polo. Awesome guy. We often tease each other because he's from Essex, which is right across the way from London. So he says he's from the Oakland of London, whereas I'm like from the Oakland of San Francisco. So it's a little more, I guess, rough and tumble, if you will. So I would say that we write our goals down. So the first goal that I'd ever had when I started playing polo was just become a good rider. Polo is like 80% riding, 20% rules and hitting and all of those other components. So my first year was like, I'm just going to ride. I probably rode more than I ever played polo. My second year was kind of like I say 2.5 years. My second year was like, okay, you're going to get out there on the field. You're really going to learn the feel for the game, get out there, see what it's like to bump up against players, run, play the game at speed, hit at speed, all of these different things, like scare the hell out of yourself, which I've done, fall off the horse, like fall off during a game, like all those things I wanted to experience, which I did. As I've now owned a horse and keep her stable close to where I live, the big part was like, how do I get the logistics to make polo happen? So that was buying a trailer, getting my own rig, like truck. So like got my own diesel and all that kind of stuff, and making sure that happened. And then kind of paying off a lot of those components to say, you know what, now I can play polo at a, sort of the minimum cost. That's a huge factor that a lot of people don't rule in. And it's something that I always like to be very up for and transparent about, is the cost. So like if I can transport my horse and keep her close to me, I don't have to pay anyone for lessons. I can keep her trained. I don't have to have anyone tune her up. I'm not saying that that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's somebody's livelihood. But for me, where I sit, I mean, I do okay, but not enough to pay other people to do the work that it takes to make polo happen. So I have to do that on my own to make it happen. So making those logistics work, making the costs work. And so like paying for my trailer outright, owning my horse outright, and then almost in a few months I'll own the truck outright. And then that brings my costs and effectiveness down super low. So that was another goal. Now, the next goal that I have for polo is like beyond logistics and cost and being able to ride and actually get just the basics of the game, is now to understand the strategy and the theory of the game. Because there is a lot of theory that is polo. Like, for example, when we play on the field, we play in like this idea of a diamond. We always kind of have to be on the mallet side of the other player so that we can actually take them out with like our other mallet or ride them off or whatever it is that you want. To ride off is basically when you bump your horse into another one. A hook is basically when you take your mallet, as they try to take a swing, you can slap it down. There's a lot of different things in polo and a lot of different defensive plays that you can do. Do I dribble the ball and take it with me, or do I back the ball to another player? So there's a lot of theory into polo, because it is a team sport where I play with 3 other players. That now goes into understanding how we can actually win and achieve certain goals. And so that's kind of what I'm focused on this year, is theory and strategy of the game. Now that I have all of those other fundamentals, that I can play the game effectively and regularly.
That is cool. How do you communicate with your team on the field? You just yell?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
My voice would be gone.
like a really good polo game, people are yelling to each other the entire time. People are yelling at each other. So, but there are 4 people, and basically, if you play polo, I think efficiently or correctly, those people are usually in succession. So you have the 4th, who's your back. You have, your 1st, who's your front. And so they're all playing different roles in sort of that dance, if you will. And they're playing the opposing players.
Do you play?
It depends. So it just really depends on the day. So sometimes I might be the most experienced player, and so I'll play the back, which is generally the number 4, and that is to be the person who just kind of backs up. And they're the pessimist, if you will. They're always going in with the understanding that your team could potentially lose the ball. So if they do, you want to be out there backed up to make sure that the other team can't take it back the other way. The front is always the optimist. They're fighting. They're always kind of going forward, to take it to the front. I think that's my understanding. Yeah, I think that's my understanding of the game. The back always backs everybody up. They're a strong hitter and a strong defender. And I think in polo, you have to understand the kind of horse that you play, right? So if you got, off the track thoroughbred that's, ready to bolt and run, that's great. They can take it down the field if you're a good enough hitter. Sunny is not that. Sunny is, she's like this, sort of quarter horse or native horse, if you will, from Latin America. She's really good at ramming. She can pirouette on a dime. She's really good at knocking things back and going for it. So a lot of what we do is we do a lot more defense, so me and Sunny, and we're learning to do that more. So Sunny is not designed to bolt down the field like some horses are. And so that's another thing that you kind of have to understand with polo is what kind of horse are you playing, and what kind of player are you? I do like speed, but Sunny is not necessarily, she can run, she's quick, but she is not designed for sustained speed down that length of field. So without burning her out. And then if you burn her out after so many plays, then you got a burnt out horse that you're playing back the whole time. And, there's just a lot of different things that one has to consider when they're making decisions about how to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's why quarter horses were named that in the first place.
Right.
Just being able to have that, the fastest for a quarter mile. But after that, don't ask them no questions.
Right, exactly. They're gassed out, right? So, and Sunny very much falls into that category. So that's what it is. So
that's cool. So when you go to play, you're not always playing with the same people.
No, I'm not always playing with the same people. So at our club, basically, they'll mix us up and things like that. But ideally, we want to play with a team. And so a team that you regularly play with. So sometimes I can play with my friends who I normally play with. The guy, Ollie from the UK that I talk about, is always great to kind of just team up with him. There are also people I usually just kind of vibe with really well. So when it's we got a team, good, in polo, the communication in polo is a little difficult when you're mixing people up sometimes, like we do in our clubs, because you may not always be comfortable yelling at people or people yelling at you. So but I think that that's where the community building and things like that come in, and I think that that's the great thing that I like about polo is that each player and each person is forced to kind of get out of their comfort zone, whether that's speed or understanding their horse, understanding their abilities, or then even just something as basic as communicating with another player. Yeah, so that's really about it.
How many people do you think you've had to sit down and talk with to understand polo as much as you have now?
Wow. The polo community's been super open, super welcoming. I've heard some things in sort of the broader equestrian community, with Black people, with people of color and things like that, or just yeah, just in general, like with polo. I mean, it was usually a male-dominated sport, but it's actually moving and skewing more to in favor of women. Um, so they've had men in general have had their own experiences in polo, I imagine. But sitting down, I mean, but so the point that I was trying to make is that everybody's been so open, like so many, and I think the polo community is crazy. So people are just like, we're just like, I mean, people just bolt their horses down the field. They're like bumping horses into each other. They're like each other's mallets. They're dangling off. So I think that get the field, people look beyond that and sort of respect. And if they see like, hey, this person's really kind of putting their best foot forward, it doesn't matter. They're just like, this person's crazy enough to play with us. You know what? Here's some advice. And so I've gotten advice from some, amazing players. Some amazing, yeah, just amazing players from not only here but from around the world, which has been really cool. Like I put up riding videos, and somebody from the UK try and hand closer to her, telling me that one day. And it's great. It's really cool that polo is like a global sport that's played throughout the world. There aren't a lot of players, only about 24,000 players worldwide. But those 24,000 players are scattered throughout the world. They're obviously Argentina and the United States in the UK are the largest sort of concentrations of players. But you have huge contingents of players in Africa, in the Middle East, and in Asia. So, and then of course down in Australia too, you've got quite a few players. I got a boy down there that's playing a little bit, I think, still too. So, yeah, it's an amazing kind of global community. We're small, so I think everybody kind of knows each other, or is a degree or two away from knowing somebody who knows someone. So, and it's amazing. Like I said, it's a co-ed sport. It's mixed sex, if you will. So I play with women on my team, men. The horse in polo is really the great equalizer. And, you can play with, women who are heavy contenders, right? You don't like, oh shit, like, excuse me, so-and-so is playing and she's on that team. Like we're done. And it could probably be a team of just men. And you see some of these stacks up, like these women stacked up against you. Like it's really interesting to kind of see those dynamics at play now, when you play polo. And that's like the thing that I really like about the sport is that, it, with the exception of the cost, it could be very egalitarian. So yeah, so that's really that's it.
That is cool.
Yeah.
What advice would you give aspiring equestrians who either just want to get into the horse industry or want to get into polo specifically?
Yeah, for sure. There's a few things that I was like, perseverance, endurance, and just consistency. In fact, my boy and I named my trailer that I trade the vintage trailer I restored for Sunny. We named it Endurance because we always said that like this is like a thing that you just kind of have to endure. There are a lot of days where I've gotten off the field where I haven't played well. There are days where I'm like, man, this is super expensive. There are days where things are going on. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, if I talk to my accountant right now, he'd be like, Dale, what? And, so, I think it's just like that endurance and doing something that you want. Like, I think I have this idea, so where your focus goes, your energy flows. So basically just kind of persevere and kind of keep that consistency, if you will. And I think that your energy will kind of just sort of manifest those things to kind of more or less happen. So being consistent and enduring the things, the little things. I mean, sometimes we have to check our egos at the door. We used to say at the gym all the time, like, check your ego. Sometimes people will correct you, but it doesn't always mean that they're talking to you. They're talking about something that you're doing. And then if you don't necessarily feel as if you're a place that you're welcome, you got to sometimes make yourself welcome. I mean, somebody, I think I did an interview not long ago. It's either with NPR or somebody else, but they're asking me like, how does it feel to kind of go into some of these spaces? And I said, well, nobody's challenging me in these spaces. No one's telling me that I can not be there. But sometimes that idea of imposter syndrome, that idea of you're playing with people who've played polo for generations, the money, sort of that generational wealth, and just those differences and stark differences that we see in the United States between, and I'm just going to bring this in, like ethnicity and ancestry. Like, I'm a Black man. I did not have necessarily the same resources and things like that. And I think most people know that. But I think that it's very easy for, people who don't fit that paradigm to get down on themselves and ask themselves why they should be there. I don't think they should do that. I think people should, take a breath and walk in there and say, I belong here. It's okay. Like, I do that every day. I do that at work. I do that at polo. I do that at other places. And sometimes you will be the only person who may look or come from an experience like yours. And that's mine. I mean, I was born and raised here in East Oakland. There aren't a lot of like East Oakland polo players. I can tell you, it might just be one. So to kind of do that and make that happen, you just kind of have to kind of have the wherewithal and sometimes say, yeah, I might be the only one, but it doesn't mean that I'll be the last. And so, you just kind of have to go out there and kind of make yourself known. And like I said, I like to represent the sport, myself and my family and, my community, Oakland and whatnot, with like the utmost integrity, and kind of shows kind of like, what we're made of. Right. So I think that's always like a big thing. So that's what I try to do and try to make that transcend in everything that I do, whether it's like work or polo or anything like that. So that's what I tell aspiring player, and just try and find ways to ride. I've found all sorts of ways to ride to bring my average effective cost down as much as possible, and just to make that happen. Yeah. And there are ways to do it. There are people who will want you to train their horses. Just kind of exercise their horses. But you kind of like have to ask. And like my mom always says, a closed mouth don't get fed. Right. So I often, I've asked a lot, and I've talked a lot to people who've had more resources to me about, what my goals are. And that's opened up some doors for me, definitely. So, and I mean, and that's okay, because I'm like old as hell, right? So, to even like do that is, even like an old person is just like, but people will help you do that.
Now you need to tell us how old you are.
I started playing polo at 32. I literally just turned I just turned 35. So.
Okay, you're not that old.
That's not old.
Yeah.
Not that old.
Oh.
But shout out to you being that example and showing people that your life isn't over after 30. Like if you want to wake up and say, I'm gonna chase after this dream that I've always had, you can absolutely do it.
Yeah, definitely. You don't really start making decent money till, if you kind of stay with it, you don't make decent money till sometime after 30. So most can't do nothing until they like post 30. So they might as well just like reset expectations and say like, you know what, I'm gonna do this at like 33. I was basically
like, yes.
I was destitute in my early 20s. So I just like people, I'm gonna do this in my like, no, you're not. Most likely, I did stats, and I'm looking at the bell curve, and you fall right in that 65%. You're not going to do that. So maybe the expectations, push them just a little bit forward. It's okay. Okay, right?
It's okay. Yes, it is okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I've never really assigned myself to, at 40 I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that and that. But yeah, so yeah, that's it.
I love that. I love that. I think we've come across a lot of, there's like two different kinds of people. There's like the young people who are like, oh, I want to start writing like right now. Oh my gosh, I'm looking for sponsorships. I'm trying to find bars, things like that. And then there's
Yeah.
other subset of people that are like, I didn't start writing till later on in my life, and I just don't know of people to connect with. So like when
Right.
people interact with us, we kind of have two different kinds of people.
Right.
So I'm, thankful that we have someone that can attest to having success being that second kind of person, later in life, not giving up and still trying to find community around something that you have become passionate about. So
Exactly. And I mean, the thing about it is like, as people need to understand, some of these like equestrian sports goes like in polo, like some of the older or some of the best players are in their 40s and 50s. And I mean, it's like when you think about like golfers and stuff like that, like Tiger Woods and stuff, although he did really well, I think he hit some of his best, like kind of later in life and things like that, where, your mind is a little bit more focused. And I find myself like, I wouldn't even be able to do this in my 20s. My mind was all over the place. I mean, there was just a lot of things going on for a guy in their 20s. Just no. So
I was trying not to laugh. I'm sorry.
I know, I'm like suppressing it.
yeah.
That's probably part of the reason why mares are better for polo. Just gonna
yeah,
throw that out there.
That part.
Probably. I would probably say that might be a fact. So except when someone's playing a gelding and your mare's in heat and you're like, oh damn.
We are not to bump into him right now. Stop.
Yeah. So it's just like trying to move over. It's like, no, that's not how we play the sport today, Sonny. Like we gotta bolt on the other side of the field or something like that. So, or when the mares or multiple bears are in heat and they're like attacking each other, like biting each other.
Oh,
like,
what are you trying to say?
it's like there's nobody here to compete for. Like you don't have to fight against each other. There are no geldings here. But yeah, so yeah, no, I kind of like this sort of in my later in life. And then when you look at some of the like polo luminaries, if you will, we've got a gentleman here by the name of Memo Garcita here, and he's originally from Mexico, but lives here in California, down near Southern California. Is like the polo. We call him the Michael Jordan of polo. I've seen him play, and he's playing well into his 60s, and he's an amazing player. So as I look at timelines about how I want to grow and progress with the sport, I think to myself like, well, I've got another good 30 years or so. So there's really no rush in sort of trying to make it all happen today.
That is a word. How do you see a lot of injuries in polo?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes and no. Like with polo, I mean, we prioritize safety over everything. Obviously, safety of the animal first, and then safety of the humans as well. A lot of times I've seen falls from people not necessarily following the rules, people doing something like dangerous riding, which they'll throw flags for. I've seen people like fall because of maybe not so great equitation. And we have a very functional sort of equitation or riding style in polo. Like I say, posting at the canter, things like that you wouldn't see in other equestrian disciplines. We ride most of the time like in the half seat, the most of the game. So there's a lot of different things. So like, if people are too far forward, or if they're not doing enough, or if they're dangerously riding and just kind of sporadically running their horse all around and T-bone into somebody. I've definitely seen like injuries from those cases. I've seen like someone T-bone, I've seen someone fall. And I've seen someone like get heat stroke, but no like deaths, nothing that was terrible. But I think the common injuries are like collarbone fractures, people breaking their wrists. I've heard of some people breaking their backs. There are potentially deaths, but that's like in any equestrian discipline. But yeah, I have seen some injuries to both horses and players.
Interesting. Okay. I was just curious because I'm like just trying to envision, like I need to look up a game. I need to see what this is supposed to look like.
Right.
Because I'm like, obviously this is like something that is competitive and fun, but you know, as it's described to you, it's like, woo, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you so much for talking to us today. And I forgot we have the Derby round.
Okay, let's do it.
I just looked it up and then I completely forgot about it. Okay, hold on. Let me get our questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
What the heck? Where'd they go? Oh, they're right here. Hold on. All right. So this is the Derby round. I'll give you a drum roll. Okay. All right. So you just answer either or, and then we have a couple questions at the end. But first thing that comes to your mind is the answer. All right. English or Western?
English.
Solids or spots?
Solids.
Bays or grays?
Bays.
Brown tack or black tack?
Black tack.
A sponge or a curry brush?
Oh, curry brush.
Shod or barefoot?
Shod.
Bumper pull or gooseneck?
Oh, a bumper pull.
We don't have many people that say that.
I have a bumper pull, so like, you
That's-
know.
That is what I said. Okay. Rope halter or nylon halter?
Ooh, nylon halter.
Wood fence or electric fence?
Can I say both?
I mean, if you need to, that's fine.
All right. I do like wood fence. I do have a design aesthetic that I appreciate about the wood. So let's go with wood.
Okay. What is your favorite piece of barn equipment?
Oh shit. Sorry.
Okay. It's okay. We grown.
Okay, all right. What's my favorite piece of barn equipment? A rake.
See that you cannot live without that. Like,
Sure can.
who's gonna pick up that manure with your bare
Right.
hands?
No.
Right.
And a shovel, you would just waste all the shavings.
Right. Exactly.
Favorite piece of tack?
My saddle.
When was the last time you fell off? Be
Maybe
honest.
2 weeks ago or something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, good. I'm glad you're healthy. If money was no object, what is one horse-related purchase you would make?
Ranch.
Good. I don't know who has said something. Oh no, Michael Lynch said he would get like a stud fee, but everyone else wants a ranch.
Yeah.
That stud semen is like expensive.
Yeah, it's almost as much as a freaking ranch. Okay.
Yeah, or just buy another horse. Like,
You know, these people in their breed lines, their bloodline.
there's plenty around. I don't need to stud, so I can just go get another one.
Right. I feel you. I feel you. Well, that was it. Thank you so much again for spending time with us. And
Thank you for having
Caitlin, do you have anything else?
I just want to say thank you and make sure you shout out your socials so people know where to follow you.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I used to live in San Francisco proper. So my handle is SF, like San Francisco exceptionalism. And that's it at Gmail. I was like, well, not Gmail, shit. I at Instagram. Sorry.
Don't be sending him no emails, y'all. Just follow the Instagram.
Right. That's not his email.
That's not even my email. So yeah,
Oh.
you're gonna bounce back with a negatory. So,
You can be like, could not find email address.
Right.
yeah.
Dang, we tried. All right. Well, thank you so much again. And yeah, your episode will go live on Friday.
Oh, I love it. So that means, yeah, there's two things. The NPR stuff is going live on Friday too. So I have two things to look forward to.
Lord have mercy. We got to compete with NPR. Seriously. He said, yeah.
You better tell them to put this link in the article.
Yeah. This episode going live on Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my stomach hurts. All right.
This was a lot of fun. My face
Yeah.
hurts as always.
Pleasure. Thank you both so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. We will talk to you later.
No, indeed.
Bye.
All the
All right. Bye.
bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Young Black Equestrians. Head over to our Facebook or Instagram pages and let us know what you thought about that episode. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and have the opportunity to be featured in our next episode. See you next week.